Welcome to It's Your Ego, Stupid, a show lovingly intended for millions of spiritual, intelligent, and imperfect people like you who may at times be led into ego stupidity, a lesser version of yourself and a lesser version of life. This show will give you a much deeper understanding of what ego is, what it's doing to your life, how it can weaken your human and spiritual wellness, and how you can heal in each of these areas if needed. It's Your Ego, Stupid will heighten your awareness of the intense link between your ego and spirit, your humanity and divinity, and the synergy that can lead to the best version of you and your life. Your host is Dr. Nick Martin, a licensed psychologist who has worked in the clinical, university, school, and private practice settings over the past 40 years, while serving as a therapist, diagnostician, educator, and consultant. Welcome again to It's Your Ego, Stupid. And now your host, Dr. Nick Martin.
Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Nick Martin, and thank you for listening to It's Your Ego, Stupid on OMTimes Radio. I hope you've had a great week as you go about meeting the many important challenges that we all face, which during today's show will have us looking at how higher ego power, feeling overly empowered, can cause difficulty in a person's ability to grow the quality of their mind by making a deeper connection to human and divine truth. This is a difficulty in which people often have difficulty bringing truth into their mind, changing things that they already think to bring them into greater alignment with truth, and getting rid of things they have been thinking because they have come to realize they aren't true. All this because for them it risks loss of control in their life and often over others. This is also a difficulty in which the high-power person doesn't allow others to shape their thoughts and beliefs, while feeling entitled to tell others what they should be thinking and believing. But before we go into that focus more deeply, I want to mention that It's Your Ego, Stupid is a program for spiritual, intelligent, and imperfect people, just like you and me, who may at times be led by our ego into something I call ego stupidity. Ego stupidity rooted in ego energy, affecting relationships with family, friends, and coworkers, which could stand some improvement, maybe a lot of improvement. Ego stupidity rooted in ego energy impacting our efforts to achieve and to be successful, to experience a sense of meaning to our life, and getting on with our life's work. Ego stupidity affecting our ability to deal effectively with all of the changes, adversity, stressors, and conflicts taking place in all of our lives, often leading to their managing us rather than our managing them. Ego stupidity making it difficult to grow our mind with truth while keeping us stuck in faulty beliefs, values, attitudes, and prejudices, with many nowadays acquired from unfiltered social media, fake news on the internet, and opinion news on TV often pretending to be the truth. Ego stupidity making it difficult to feel genuine, lasting happiness, while often leading us into unnecessary anger, anxiety, guilt, sadness, or even fake happiness being substituted for the real thing. And finally, ego stupidity impacting our spiritual wellness and ability to be the love, life, and energy God is in our daily thoughts, words, and deeds. As you can see, there are lots of important places that ego stupidity can make its appearance in our lives, the source of which is the nature of our ego energy. If things aren't going as well as you'd like in any of these areas, you've come to the right place, because a lot of what's going wrong has nothing to do with our intelligence, or the absence of spirituality, or mental instability, and has a lot more to do with our ego energy, serving as the fuel for ego stupidity. Your lives, relationships, and experiences have taught me all of that over the past 40 years, and what I'm sharing with you in my website, my books, and my shows about ego energy and ego stupidity, and how we can heal it with ego medicine, when and where needed. Again, thank you for tuning into It's Your Ego Stupid on OMTimes Radio. During our show today, we're going to continue focusing on being able to grow our minds with truth. Now, you've probably never thought about this, but you've taught me that our ability to be connected to truth, to reality, has a profound effect on the quality of life we are able to live. The better connected our beliefs and values and attitudes are connected to reality, the greater the version of ourselves and the greater a version of life we can live, because they're connected to truth. We are designed by evolution and the wisdom of the ages to do best when we stand on truth as our foundation when living and solving life's problems, even when that truth can be painful at times. When Jesus said, "And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free," he was speaking exactly to that, the healthy empowerment of truth. Now, many people may think that because they have this wondrous tool called a brain, that all they need to do is let it do its thing and bring us to truth within our thoughts and beliefs. But that's not really how it works. Your brain doesn't make distinctions for you involving belief and truth, fact from fiction, and fantasy from reality. As incredible a tool as it is, it can't do that. You must do that. You must take responsibility for growing your mind with human and divine truth. But it's not as simple as that, because our ego energy can get in the way of our taking that responsibility and effectively growing our mind. Our ego power, flexibility, and vulnerability can each get in the way of this happening. This show, my previous one, and the next four are about showing you how it can do that and what you can do about it. We're looking at how unhealthy, imbalanced ego energy can lead to creating and using faulty ideas, beliefs, values, and attitudes that lower the quality of our mind as we gain distance from human and divine truth. Distance from reality, which is lowering the quality of our mind. Now, before we go ahead, I want to answer some very important questions that you may have or you should have. Questions such as, isn't truth relative? Isn't truth in the mind of the thinker of the truth? Isn't truth shaped by a lifetime of relationships, experiences, and events? Well, the answer to all three questions is yes. But the degree of relativity is being impacted by the power, flexibility, and vulnerability in a person's ego energy, within your ego energy. Human truth becomes much more relative when the thinker of the truth is consumed with ego energy that is unhealthy and imbalanced, whether it's within its power, flexibility, or vulnerability. It tends to be filled with unhealthy beliefs, attitudes, and prejudices that are truth disconnected, removed from reality. But on the other hand, human truth becomes much less relative and far more consensual across people when our ego energy is balanced within its power, flexibility, and vulnerability. And this is the case even though we can all be coming from different life experiences. Egoically healthy people tend to think in more similar, consensual, reality-connected ways about various matters, whether they're dealing with relationships or conflict, change, adversity, and all of the other important life areas that I talk about in my work. Now, turning to the focus of today's show, we're looking at the impact of higher ego power on a person's ability to grow their mind. People with higher power feel very over-empowered and often have a difficult time listening to others and allowing them to tell them what they think or believe or not to think or believe. For them, this risks a loss of power and control, which they so desperately want to hold on to, often at all costs, even when they're demonstrably wrong. Does that sound familiar when it comes to yourself or somebody you know? They also want to further empower themselves with the control of being able to tell others what they should be thinking, regardless of whether it's true or not. Does that sound familiar? Their sense of over-empowerment often leads them to trust only in themselves, because trusting others risks the loss of control, and that's something they absolutely refuse to do. They often have difficulty questioning their own thoughts, beliefs, and attitudes and values, because if they do so, this risks the loss of control, a form of being empowered, because they may have to admit that they were wrong. Again, a form of having lost control. Being wrong is a loss of power, a loss of control in the experience of the higher ego power person. And this affects their ability to learn new things, to change what they know, and to get rid of faulty thinking, all of which lowers the quality of their mind, as it's keeping them at a distance from truth. Does any of this sound familiar to you? Well, millions of people are experiencing these difficulties because there are billions of people on the planet, and every one of them has an ego, just like you and me. Some of these people are living in roles such as the dictator, the rebel, and the bully that I talk about in my book, The Two Voices Within. I want you to take a look to see if you or a loved one is experiencing any of the symptoms, the ego stupidity, and ego's impact on spiritual wellness I'll be talking about today. I want you to diagnose you, because you're the only one living you, 24/7. First, we're going to take a look at some of the symptoms that indicate if a higher ego power voice or energy is talking to and through you in your life. I'll be mentioning a few here, but there are more in my book, It's Your Ego Stupid. The first symptom, you have difficulty questioning your own thoughts while readily questioning the thoughts of others. People with higher ego power, due to their over-empowerment, readily question the thoughts of other persons, but they have difficulty questioning their own because that reflects a loss of control, a loss of power, if they have to do that. Here are some questions connected to the symptom to see if it takes you closer into seeing whether it's something that's happening for yourself or maybe somebody you know. Do you just assume that whatever you're thinking is true, correct, or right? People that are overly empowered, as I said, they have trouble questioning whether what they're thinking is correct or accurate. Also, do you easily question or challenge or attack what others are telling you? That the person with higher ego power often, in some ways, pushes away the ideas of other people because they need to feel like they're in control of things and that others are not, through the force or the influence of their other ideas that aren't their own. They need to push those away, which comes with challenging them, questioning them, often excessively, not normally, as we might all do it sometimes. Do you find it difficult to admit to yourself and others that you were wrong? This is something that's very, very difficult for higher ego power people to do, because admitting that they're wrong is a form of disempowerment, and this is alien to what they're about, to what their energy is about, that keeps them, in a way, locked into this idea that they can't be wrong. Others can, but I can't. And do you find it difficult to admit to yourself and others they were wrong? So not only admitting to themselves that they were wrong about something is quite difficult, but God forbid, telling other people they were wrong. This is so hard for people with higher ego power, because that behavior inside of them is a form of disempowerment. And also, do you feel ashamed for having been wrong? People with higher ego power often experience a feeling of shame or guilt for having been wrong, because it's as if they're saying, I shouldn't have been wrong. I shouldn't have been thought something that was inaccurate or incorrect. And they get down on themselves. So this is the first symptom with some of the questions. And I'll just ask you to ask yourself, does any of that sound familiar to you or for somebody that you know? We're going to go on to the next symptom. You frequently use phrases such as believe me, trust me, or you have to believe me. People with higher ego power, when they interact with people, due to the nature of their need to influence things and control things, often use these kind of statements as if they can just make people think things by saying those kind of things. So some questions that connect with that. Do you think it's possible to force or make people think what you're thinking? The reach of over-empowerment is pretty sizable. And so it even gets to the place where people think, I can make people think what I'm thinking. I can force them to think what I'm thinking. Also, do you get frustrated with people or angry when they aren't buying into what you're telling them? When you're picking up that there's a resistance to what you're saying, and it makes you feel angry that they're not just going along with what you're saying, because after all, you're right and they're wrong. And so people with higher power get frustrated when people don't seem to be buying into what they're telling them. Do you think people should believe or follow simply because it's you? People with higher ego power often have a very high impression of themselves, a very inflated impression of themselves, and as a result, it's as if they're beyond question that people should automatically think about what they're saying to them and respecting what they're saying and agreeing with what they're saying because it's them. Also, do you feel insulted when they don't believe you or automatically trust you? There's this irrational feeling of being insulted. You've insulted me, or I feel insulted because you didn't simply go along with what I was saying. And so these are kinds of questions that kind of fall in with this need to tell people that they should be trusting them, they should be believing me, you have to believe me. Does any of this sound familiar for yourself or perhaps somebody that you know? We are coming up on our first break. When we return, we're going to take a look at some more symptoms before we go on to reflections of ego stupidity, connected to people with higher ego power and their ability to grow their mind with truth, the quality of their mind. This is Dr. Nick. You're listening to It's Your Ego Stupid on OMTimes Radio. And I'll see you after the break.
Conscious media for conscious minds. OMTimes. Being a radio host on IOM-FM allows you to build your show on a rich platform with the power of the internet to fulfill your outreach goals and connect with a very specialized and global online audience, unlimited by time and distance. OMTimes Radio will provide you with web relevance, a recognizable conscious brand, and with the standard of excellence that has accompanied every single OMTimes endeavor. Host your show with OMTimes Radio Network.
Did you know that you have the power to change anything in your life? Did you know you can do so even with the things that you've already decided are impossible to change? Come join me, Venus Castleberg, on Outside the Impossible as I interview people from around the globe that have literally changed the things they thought were impossible to change just by using the amazing tools of Access Consciousness. Now airing Wednesdays, 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. Do you dare to believe that anything really is possible?
Hi, Dr. Nick Martin here. I want to invite you to visit my website, egoandspirit.info, where you can find lots of information on ego and download your free ebook copy of It's Your Ego Stupid. Fix it to fix your life. Also, please visit the shop page where you can find each of my other books, Ego Therapy, Ego Spiritualism, and The Two Voices Within.
A social distancing tip.
Putting distance between yourself and others is critical to slowing the spread of coronavirus. So here are ways to stay in contact without the physical contact part. Call, send a text, set up a video conference, post on social media, dedicate a song on the radio. If you have symptoms of fever, dry cough, and shortness of breath, call your healthcare provider before going to their office. For more info, visit coronavirus.gov.
Let's all do our part, because we're all #alone together. Brought to you by the Ad Council.
Welcome back. You're listening to It's Your Ego Stupid on OMTimes Radio, a show for intelligent, spiritual, and imperfect people just like you and me. We're going to continue looking at symptoms of higher ego power when it's getting in the way of a person's ability to grow the quality of their mind with truth. So we're going to look at the next symptom, which is that you're suspicious of new or different or better ideas that you didn't think of. People with higher ego power have a difficult time automatically being receptive to new or different or better ideas that they didn't think of. When it's not their idea, it often starts out as a bad idea for the person with higher ego power. Because, the reach of this over-empowerment is so intense and at times very irrational that the whole idea that something that I'm hearing from somebody else has to be wrong or has to be weaker than what I know, what I'm thinking, what I believe. So, some questions connected to this symptom. Do you start out rejecting someone else's ideas? Again, this whole pushing it away because to accept them might intrude upon my higher ego power and empowerment and need to believe I have it all together, that I'm right. To buy into somebody else's thinking could suggest that maybe that's not the case. And that's a difficult thing for people with higher ego power. And do you think that this makes them smarter than you or you weaker than them if they are better ideas? Sometimes the idea in and of itself, or the thinking or whatever it is that's being thrown at them, is secondary to this whole idea of whether I'm smarter or they're smarter, whether I'm stronger or I'm weaker as a result. It's as if the idea is just a vehicle to expose this issue with regard to empowerment and seeing the acceptance of one's other ideas beyond their own may signal that somebody is smarter than them or that they're stronger than them. So this is another question. Another one. Do you automatically start looking for the holes or the missing pieces in what people are telling you or sharing with you? So they start out looking for the negative. They start looking for weaknesses in a way so that they can retain their sense of being empowered or more empowered than the person who may be communicating things to them. Also, do you approach these situations as being more like a competition for control than it is to uncover truth and learn? So, the whole, idea is that this is more like a competition about my ideas are better than you. I'm stronger than you. I'm smarter than you are. When people are exchanging thoughts and beliefs and learning new things or refusing to learn new things. And also, do you disrespect and attack the thinking of others with either direct or subtle insults? This is a reflection of getting pretty desperate on the part of people with higher ego power when they're feeling threatened. Their needs for control are being threatened. So they start to attack people's ideas, but insulting them directly or indirectly. It's an unhealthy way of trying to retain empowerment through turning things onto a very personal level. So those are some questions linked to that symptom. Does any of that sound familiar to you or for somebody that you know? Okay, we're going to take a look at one more symptom before we move ahead to reflections of ego stupidity. And this symptom is that you find listening to or learning from others to be difficult and something you try to avoid. People with higher ego power find the idea of stopping and just paying attention, just genuinely listening to others and trying to learn from others to be very difficult. And that's because that energy, that higher ego power energy, is pushing that experience to a distance and making it something to be avoided. Some questions connected to that. Are you the only one you want to listen to? People with higher ego power pretty much like listening to themselves rather than being able to listen to other people. And do you enjoy hearing the sound of your voice? People with higher ego power sometimes act like they're getting paid by the word to say things, to speak things out. So they just can't get enough of themselves in some respects. Do you have any trouble paying attention to other ideas? People with higher ego power don't want to pay attention too much or too long because it's as if every second that they direct attention to somebody else and try to take something seriously that they're sharing, that they're feeling disempowered, that it's seeping away from me. I'm not the empowered person now. The person I'm listening to is now the empowered person. And maybe, do you also interrupt people a lot when they're talking? People with higher ego power interrupt people because it's as if they can't take it anymore. They can't stop. They can't take hearing somebody else's ideas and maybe their better ideas and their better beliefs and all those other things that could be closer to truth. And so they stop that, and they can stop it by interrupting people. So these are some symptoms of ego stupidity with questions connected to them. You can think about them over time, not overnight, to get a sense of whether they are something that you are experiencing, something that's familiar to you or somebody that you know. Now we're going to take a look at reflections of ego stupidity and when it's happening in a higher ego power person's ability to grow the quality of their mind. Some of the various ways that higher ego power impacts their ability and willingness to work with their mind. And some of these can be strange or seem strange or weird or funny or inappropriate if you're not living in that energy. But for those with higher ego power, it's leading them to engage in these ego-rooted, non-reality-based, truth-disconnected thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, affecting their ability to grow their mind with truth. And it often leads them to conclude that the abnormal things that they think or feel or do are normal when they aren't. And like the symptoms, they become their abnormal normal that they don't realize they're caught up in. But others often can because they aren't looking at them through the same ego energy prism or filter that the higher power person is looking through to see what's taking place. Now, these are intelligent people. They're spiritual people. They're imperfect and they're mentally stable people. Unfortunately, they've gotten caught up in the web of an abnormal world of their own making. Not ego's making. They made it. They just built it upon the energy. And this is happening due to their unhealthy, imbalanced, higher ego power energy. And they can remain stuck there until they heal the energy that's leading them to the symptoms and the ego stupidity and ego's impact on their spiritual wellness. They can do this with the use of ego medicine, consisting of knowing what ego is and isn't, knowing that ego is an energy at work in our lives to promote our survival, just the way our brain is promoting our survival and our heart is promoting our survival. And also understanding some of the myths, the inaccuracies that have been stated about ego. For example, that ego has an intentional quality that's intentionally attempting to impact your life and the things that are going on it, which it isn't because it doesn't have that capacity. It's an energy. And also that ego, in some respects, has an intellect, that it has the capacity for awareness of itself, which it doesn't. In fact, ego doesn't know what it is. It doesn't know who you are, and it doesn't know who God is. And then the next contributor, the second one, is tuning into our ego energy, coming to know the amount of ego power, flexibility, and vulnerability that's going on within our ego energy, something that I assist you with across my books and my podcasts and my website. And then the third contributor is being able to replace any ego-rooted, non-reality-based, truth-disconnected thoughts and beliefs, again, that we created. with those that are connected to truth and reality, both human and divine. And we're going to be looking at that third contributor right now. These are the kinds of inaccurate, illogical, irrational thoughts that people with higher ego power can bring into growing the quality of their mind. And here is the first one. I'm smarter than everyone else. People with higher ego power often think they're the smartest person in the room. And the reality is they may be a smart individual. They probably are. But the fact that they are thinking they're the smartest person, they're smarter than everybody else, well, that is a reflection of non-reality-based thinking. And this is ego stupidity that feeds into some additional ego stupidity. That includes, I don't really have to listen to others. That's a non-reality-based thought. Truth disconnected. You sure need to listen to others. We all do at times. Also, that listening and learning can only make me dumber or weaker. This is a thought that people with higher ego power often think, that somehow if I give way to other people, that will weaken me if I pay attention to what they're having to say. Also, I have the right to tell others what they should be thinking. Again, due to their strong sense of empowerment, they feel entitled that they can tell others what to think. And also, I should attack others for disagreeing with me. They think that this is appropriate, that this is something that other people deserve for me to attack them because of their disagreement, their threats to my power, control, or influence. Is what's really going on underneath that thought, but they're unaware of it. When your ego power is healing, you realize that in addition to yourself, there are many other smart people worth listening to and learning from. But until then, when you're thinking that I'm smarter than everyone else, that's your ego making you stupid. Another reflection of ego stupidity. I can't let others change my mind. For higher ego power people, the idea that other people would change their mind is a loss of control. They can't make me think different things or have different beliefs than I currently have, and they shouldn't. And that's a non-reality-based, irrational thought that they carry around with them, rooted in the ego power. And this is ego stupidity. It feeds into additional ego stupidity, like refusing to listen to people. It's a form of behavioral ego stupidity. I refuse to listen to you. I'm not going to listen to you. I'm never going to listen to you. Or attacking people with insults. Again, pushing them away, whatever they have to say. This is a way of keeping them distant from my mind. And also, I'm weaker if I let others influence my mind and thinking. A non-reality-based thought. The idea that if people influence me, if they are offering different thoughts and ideas, that I need to push that away. That makes me weaker if I let them do that. So I can't let them change my thoughts. So when your ego power is healing, you realize that listening and learning from others is a much more empowering and truth-connecting than the strategy of not letting others change your mind at the appropriate times and places. But until then, when you're thinking that I can't let others change my mind, that's your ego making you stupid. I'm going to talk about one more reflection before we go into insights. And this is that I can make people think what I want them to think. People with higher ego power feel so empowered that they can actually force themselves and their ideas and their beliefs upon others. This is something I referred to earlier when we talked about symptoms. Some of the additional non-reality-based ego stupidity going on is that people always believe what I'm telling them to think or believe. People with higher ego power think that people automatically are believing exactly what they tell them. That they also think that people aren't questioning what I'm telling them to think or believe. Again, they think they have so much power over others. And they even get to a place where sometimes they think I'm the chosen one that people must listen to. In some ways, they often can have this, what I call a messiah complex, in which they insist that they are the ones that people should be listening to because I have all of the right ideas. So when your ego power is healing, you realize that healthy people will often listen more to themselves, and also your ability to make people think your thoughts is more limited than you're making it out to be. But until then, when you're thinking that I can make people think what I want them to think, well, that's your ego making you stupid. We're going to go ahead now to talk about some insights. Ego insights connected to the symptoms and the ego stupidity I've been talking about. These are insights that can help you to better see what's going on behind the scenes and beneath the surface when it comes to difficulty growing the quality of your mind. These are insights intended to help you see more of your ego blindness and what ego is actually doing when it comes to difficulties growing your mind with truth and becoming more deeply connected to reality. Here's the first one. Your higher ego power voice prevents you from knowing that your intense needs for control is leading you to overestimate the quality of your thinking. You overestimate the quality of your thinking. It's blinding you to some of the limitations of your ideas and beliefs that are distant from truth and reality, so you're not able to see that. It's blinding you from seeing strengths in the ideas and beliefs of others, coming to know that they are operating often with some truth and reality that you are distancing yourself from, that's what's going on with this higher ego power energy. And it's also feeding into the illusions of knowing everything that is hiding you from what you don't know. So you're being hidden from what you don't know by your higher ego power energy. And it's also feeding into the illusion of knowing everything that is keeping you from what they know or do know. So it's feeding into the illusion of knowing everything. And because you think you know everything, that means I don't really need to know anything about what other people think and what they already know. When you become more ego conscious and egoically awaken, you'll be able to see all of this. We're coming up on our second break, and when we return, we'll be looking at some more of these ego insights and then completing our show today by looking at ego's impact on our spiritual wellness. This is Dr. Nick. You're listening to It's Your Ego Stupid on OMTimes Radio, and I'll see you after the break.
The Real Conscious Connection. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Connect at omtimes.com. OMTimes, creating a more conscious lifestyle.
My name is Victor Furman. Some call me the Voice. I've always been fascinated with human nature, spirituality, science, and the crossroads at which they meet. Join me Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern on OMTimes Radio, and we'll explore these topics and so much more on Destination Unlimited.
Hi, Dr. Nick here. I want to invite you to visit my website, egoandspirit.info, where you can find lots of information on ego and download your free ebook copy of It's Your Ego Stupid. Fix it to fix your life. Also, please visit the shop page, where you can find focused ego meditations that can help you know whether you are truly speaking with your voice in your life or ego is speaking for you.
Melissa from Michigan. I work an extra part-time job serving lunch at my child's school, but I still can't afford to put food on our table.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Welcome back. You're listening to It's Your Ego Stupid on OMTimes Radio, a show for intelligent, spiritual, and imperfect people, just like you and me. During this last part of today's program, we're going to continue talking about ego insights before we close things up by looking at ego's impact on our spiritual wellness. The next ego insight, is that your higher ego power voice, that energy, is stopping you from realizing that you don't like questioning yourself because this questioning makes you feel doubt or weakness or a loss of control. It's distancing you from healthily questioning of yourself in order to grow the quality of your mind. It's distancing you from accepting healthy questioning from others that can also serve to grow the quality of your mind. You're interpreting questioning as if it were an infringement or an attack on the control that you think you deserve to have as a result of your high ego power. And you're often approaching open-mindedness as a weakness, thinking that others need to be open-minded to your ideas, but you don't have to be open-minded to their ideas, because that represents a loss of control on your part. When you become more ego-conscious and awaken egoically, you'll be able to see all of this. Our next insight is that your higher ego power voice is stopping you from realizing that you're trying to order people to think like you in order to feed your needs for power and control. This really has a lot more to do with your needs for control and less with how truth-connected you are. The most important thing for you to experience is to feel that you're empowered, that you have control. Getting agreement from them, from other people, feeds into your needs for control. And you're often failing to realize that you're not getting as much agreement as you think you are. And a lot of times people with higher ego power are getting what I call conformity. People are maybe publicly signaling that they are on board with whatever the person with higher ego power is telling them to believe or to think. But in actuality, in private, that's not what they think at all. But they don't realize that. The higher ego power person doesn't realize that. And also, you're failing to realize that your way of interacting with people is often having hidden negative consequences in which people are getting quite angry and resentful of you for your treatment of them. Your energy is making the way you look at things and the way you look at them loud and clear. When I was thinking about this particular insight, it occurred to me how oftentimes in families, when young people in their adolescence start to get caught up in some extreme rebellion, and I'm not talking about the normal, healthy rebellion that comes with what we call identity formation, but rather the kind of rebellion where people are putting themselves at risk, young people, perhaps getting involved with drugs or illegal activity, things that can have long-term effects on their wellness as a result of acting out to rebel against a parent who, in many cases, is quite authoritarian or dictatorial. And it's as if that behavior in total is saying, you don't have control over me anymore. And people will go to the furthest ends, young people will go to the furthest ends to send that message, which unfortunately is often having a negative impact upon themselves. When you become more ego-conscious and awaken egoically, you'll be able to see all of this. Another insight. Your higher ego power voice is preventing you from seeing that you are threatened by the loss of control if you do allow yourself to listen to others and to acknowledge their better ideas. Listening to them for you represents a loss of control to yourself. Listening to others for you signals a loss of control to others, as if you're giving away empowerment or control when you listen to them. Listening to others is a way of saying, I don't have the control of knowing the truth already. When we're taking our time to listen to people, we're telling them that maybe we're not sure about what we already know and we want to see if somebody knows something more better. But for people with higher ego power, this idea of listening to other people is a way of, in their own way of looking at things, of saying that they don't have the control of the truth that they want to know they have. So simply put, listening to others for people with higher ego power represents a lessened or a lowered sense of control. It represents a weakening of power and a sense of weakness that starts to happen. When you become more egoically conscious and awaken egoically, you'll be able to see all of this. Got one more insight before we go on to looking at ego's impact on spiritual wellness. Your higher ego power voice has stopped you from realizing that you don't know what you don't know. Being able to face up to what you don't know invites a lowered sense of power and control in your way of being and way of looking at things. It stops you from asking questions which you are interpreting as weakness rather than strength. It's really very much a strength to ask questions about things we don't know in order to enhance the awareness of things that we need to know. But for people with higher ego power, that's difficult. It stops you from developing a healthy respect for what you don't know, which can grow the quality of your mind. People with higher ego power lack that healthy respect that I don't know something, or it's possible I don't know something, and to seek it out. It's leading you into the illusion of knowing everything to hide you from what you don't know. So if I can feel like I know everything, if I'm a know-it-all, if I know the truth, then there's nothing I don't know. As a result, I can feel more empowered. And you use this illusion to maintain control. When you become more ego-conscious and awaken egoically, you'll be able to see all of this. These are some of the reflections of ego stupidity and insights involving ego's voice. And again, there are more of them available in my book, It's Your Ego Stupid. Our last part of today's program, we're going to take a look at how higher ego power can impact our spiritual wellness when it comes to growing the quality of our mind. We're looking at ego's impact on the connection to the divinity within our humanity, the God within each of our being, which is one of the divine gifts that we've all been given. The lessening of our spiritual wellness involves gaining distance from being the love, the life, and the energy God is within our thoughts, words, and deeds, when ego is getting in the way of growing the quality of our mind. Each of these can be undermining our spiritual wellness by distancing us from God, the God within us, our divinity. So here are some examples of ego's impact on our spiritual wellness for those with higher ego power. And we'll start with being the love God is. People with higher ego power have difficulty being spiritually well and growing the quality of their mind when they are failing to embrace the minds of others with unconditional, connective, unburdened, and unlimited love. Your divinity doesn't involve gaining distance from growing your mind by failing to know the mind and truth of others, even if you don't agree with them. When your higher power affects the conditions under which you're willing to grow your mind with truth that can be learned from others, you're not being the unconditional love that God is. And when your higher power is leading you to deny others the use of their mind, you're not being the connective love God is. When your higher ego power is burdening you with distancing and disowning their mind and truth with disrespect, you're not being the unburdened love God is. And when your higher ego power is limiting the use of your mind towards growing it with truth, learned from others, you're not being the unlimited love God is. So when all of this is happening, you're gaining distance from your spirituality, and you're less spiritually well. Next, we'll talk a little bit about ego's impact on being the life God is. People with higher ego power have difficulty being spiritually well when they are dishonoring and disrespecting their ability to grow their mind with truth, learned from others. Your divinity involves welcoming the growth of your mind from others who are truly intending to serve you with honor and respect. When your higher ego power is leading you to dishonor and disrespect the potential of others to grow your mind, you're not being the life God is. When your higher ego power is leading you to see yourself as more entitled to grow their mind than they are to grow yours, you're not being the life God is. When your higher power is leading you to disrespectfully attack the thoughts and beliefs and values of others, in effect, their truth, you're not being the life God is. And when your higher ego power is leading you to neglect and ignore their thoughts in favor of yours, you're not being the life God is. So when all of this is happening, you're gaining distance from your spirituality, and you're less spiritually well. Finally, we're going to take a look at being the energy God is and ego's impact on it. This involves being able to access healing and transformative energy that's designed into your being to naturally occur when you're connected to human and divine truth. This is a capacity that's 3 million years in the making, a capacity rooted in our common source, be it known by you as God or Allah, Yahweh, Vishnu, Great Spirit, or another I have failed to mention. People with higher ego power have difficulty being spiritually well when they're failing to grow the quality of their mind towards coming to know human and divine truth. Your divinity involves healing and transformation in which growing the quality of your mind from without, from with others, as well as from within, is being welcomed by you, including areas where there is needed growth. It involves healing and transformation in which you are taking responsibility for growing the quality of your mind with truth and understanding, wherever and from whomever it can be found. When over-empowerment is leading you to fail to take this responsibility by growing it from others, you're not being the energy God is. And when over-empowerment is leading you to build your truth solely on your truth, you're not being the energy God is. When over-empowerment is leading to your failure to question the false truths you have formed from relying only on your mind, you're not being the energy God is. And when over-empowerment is blocking your ability to build and live your truth by welcoming what others have to offer to you, you're not being the energy God is. So when all of this is happening, you're gaining distance from your spirituality, and you're less spiritually well. As we leave our focus on ego's impact on our spiritual wellness, please know that we often make God and our connection to God and others so much harder than it has to be. And this is what happens when unhealthy ego energy is getting in between us. God and life and we become so much better and so much easier when we remove that obstacle with ego medicine. As we leave our focus on higher ego power and difficulty growing the quality of your mind, Give some thought to the symptoms, the ego stupidity, the insights, and the spiritual impact I've shared with you. I hope what I have shared with you today will serve as a dose of ego medicine, and if any of it resonates with you, please help me to share it with others. I want to mention before leaving that you can purchase each of my books, Ego Therapy, Ego Spiritualism, The Two Voices Within, and It's Your Ego Stupid, at the online bookstores for Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Balboa Press. I end today's show with this message. The great news is that working to heal your ego energy using ego medicine by growing your awareness of its symptoms, ego stupidity, insights, and spiritual impact will allow the divine truth in your being to flow and to shine through you and allow you to fully embrace each of the divine gifts. The spiritual part of healing is a given. It's part of your endowment. Divine truth and the divine gifts are part of your heritage that already exists within you. You need do nothing more to be spiritual because you already are. You are a spiritual being having a human experience. You only need to enhance your humanity with ego medicine so that all which is available to you is given. Fix your ego to fix your life, humanly and spiritually. I want to thank you for listening and allowing me to be your servant. Please have a great week, and do come back to my next program. In peace and love, this is Dr. Nick saying goodbye for now.